resisting Satan, but think deeper here as righteousness is presented as a proactive piece of armor that you must put on so that you will not fall in the first place to the devil. Did you get that? I want to say that again. Normally we would think when we talk about righteousness and a Christian being righteous that it's a result of being strong in the Lord and resisting Satan. I'm going to be strong in the Lord, I'm going to resist Satan, and the result will come that I'm going to be righteous. But the deeper thinking is that righteousness is a proactive thing in an everyday occurrence. You must be proactive. It's not something you chance into, Christian. It's something that you with zeal follow righteousness. Righteousness is not the opposite of falling into sin. Righteousness is a proactive thing that must be followed. It is something that is an action word. Righteousness. I'm not righteous just because I don't sin. Righteousness must be a proactive zeal for you every day. The unprepared or the unarmored Christian just going into his day in a neutral kind of attitude is going to be attacked and defeated by unrighteousness. The proactive Christian zealously puts on righteousness. And when he does, when your day is filled from beginning to end with actively trying to seek after righteousness, you will stand. You will stand. There are at least two ideas of putting on righteousness. First of all, we must live in the mindset of righteousness of Christ. The righteousness of Christ that has been glued upon us. What am I saying? I must stay in the zone. Sports people get in the zone. And sometimes when they're in the zone, they just cannot do any wrong. I hate to use a reference to softball. However, last year in the playoff games, we were in the zone. I mean, I don't know we were just in the zone. Okay, now listen. I don't mean any strangity by this. But your mindset, Christian, must be in the zone in a constant basis that I am clothed in the righteousness of Christ. Positionally, there is no wrath of Godhead in my way. That when God thinks of me, He always, in every way, thinks of me as a dear child. I am covered by the blood. That is a baseline zone. It protects me. And I want you to think back on those 16 things. Many of those, what my Sunday school class wrote down, many of those things about salvation and assurance of salvation, am I really saved, or all the things I've done, could have been defended against easily had they said Philippians 3:9, had they just been in the zone of Philippians 3:9 and being found in Him, not having mine own righteousness which is of the law, but that which is through the faith of Christ, the righteousness which is of God by faith. And that is that I don't procure righteousness, it's been glued upon me because I'm saved. And it's Christ's righteousness that is glued with super glue, liquid nails, whatever you want to say. It cannot be yanked from me. I am seen by God Almighty as righteous. Several of these examples of our Sunday school class and lives perhaps that you're dealing with theologically could be resisted by holding firm to this truth, that I'm perfectly and always will be perfectly righteous in God's eyes concerning God's present wrath and future penalty of my sin. He does not some days when I fail Him look at me as I wish I didn't have that child. He doesn't look at me some days as I think I'm going to throw my wrath back on him, or that you better watch out, I'm going to hammer you. He never looks at me that way. He always looks at me as fondly as He looks at Christ, because that's what's glued on top of me. Does that make anybody happy? Are you all waiting to go eat something later? I mean, what is the deal here? Stir yourself to the joy of the Lord. Stir yourself to the whole idea that Christ's righteousness is glued on top of you. You must be in the mindset to resist the lies of the devil and the attacks of Satan, that Christ's righteousness is on top of me. What boldness that gives the believer. What assurance that gives my soul. It lifts me from every hole and every abyss, that I and my Christ are one. Not because of what I've done on any day of my performance, but Christ is glued on top of me. That's good. Boy, is that good. And it's even biblical. Romans 10:4 says, "For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believeth." How did this righteousness come to me? Because I worked real hard to get. No, I believed on the cross, and Christ's righteousness was imputed to me without any deeds of Tobe, without any performance, without any goodness. Simple faith. That will blow your mind, or it should. Stir yourself so it will. All right? That is our theological zone mindset of putting righteousness on. You look at verse number 14, and it says, stand therefore having your loins girded about with truth and having on the breastplate of righteousness. The first aspect of that is I walk every moment and every minute of my day knowing that Christ is glued on top of me. He is Christ, the righteousness of Christ. However God looks at me, He will never look at me in the course of any day with wrath or condemnation. He will always look at me as a dear child every time. No matter what my Ellie Grace would ever do in the course of any day, she comes in to me, I will pull her up on my lap and love her and kiss her and smell her hair and eat her curls. Because she is a dear child. And all the rest too, most of them. All right, all the other children too. Now listen to me. Your Father views you that way. And you need to glue that idea in the zone of your mind on the breastplate of righteousness. That is the mindset of righteousness. There's another aspect to this. We must proactively put on righteous living as a resistance of Satan. This is where the rubber meets the road. If you're unprepared and given a choice between something in the course of a day of unrighteous and righteous, if you're unprepared, if you have not come proactively in the course of when you got up tomorrow morning, pursuing righteousness actively, not just the gluing of Jesus on you, but the working it out, the proactive living of a righteous life, you're going to get taken. There's no neutrality in the Christian life. It is zeal for righteousness or you're going to get taken. There's no, well, whatever comes my way. I'll tell you what will come your way. It's found in verse number 12 and verse number 11. The devil's going to come your way. You cannot trust your flesh in the heat of temptation and going out into this world and into its temptation as a neutral kind of whatever will happen to me, laissez-faire kind of day. You need to actively and zealously choose righteousness and pursue the activity of righteousness, purity, integrity, and uprightness. Putting on this physical or this practical breastplate is providing for and pursuing with great effort righteous living and choices in your life. Pursuing them. How many of you know, guys, the prize fighter Jack Dempsey? How many of you have heard of Jack Dempsey? How many of you ladies have not heard of Jack Dempsey? You need to ask your husband who Jack Dempsey is. All right? The great prize fighter Jack Dempsey is credited, along with another man, of having said this: the best defense is a good offense. In Dempsey's mind, the way that I win boxing matches is to, with all my effort, pound my opponent into the ground. Not to hold back and to hopefully dodge the right way. And so righteousness is offensive. We need to go on the proactive side in the course of every day to pursue the application of righteousness all the time with zeal, running after it. This is very simply a call to use the power given to you because you're dead to sin and alive to God. Romans 6:13 says, yield your members as instruments of righteousness unto God. You do have the power already through the cross and resurrection to yield to righteousness. You can proactively pursue righteousness in this Sodom and Gomorrah day. Listen closely here. Many Christians live their lives with the question, how close can I come to sin and still be holy? How close can I... Does that sound like putting on the breastplate of righteousness to you? That sounds like you get just to the edge of the cliff. How close can I get without falling off? That's what it sounds like to me. That is not at all putting on the protection of righteousness. This breastplate kind of living separates you from unholiness of mind and action, experience, and influence. It's something you're chasing after. Those things that are dangerous to you, you're leaving behind. Those things that are good and pure and good and upright, you're pursuing, you're running after them. It's a proactive chase, a hunt for righteousness. Think of the destruction and the unhappiness of your life and other Christians' life. It's interesting on this point, and you can do the study at home, but when you look at commentators, theological pastors, who have written on the breastplate of righteousness, for some reason, okay? And I see they're thinking, they connect it to the unhappiness in the Christian's life. Of the Christian who will not pursue a righteous life is the Christian who is unhappy. Listen to what another pastor said about this idea of the breastplate of righteousness. Many, if not most, of the emotions and relational problems Christians experience are caused by the lack of personal holiness. Many of our disappointments and discouragements do not come from circumstances or from other people, but from our own unconfessed and uncleansed sin. And when circumstances and other people do